feel like your voice is a really good one to have in the world, and so that's why I wanted to like have more of it on the internet, really, for my own selfish reasons as well as for everybody else, I reckon. Um,
Well, thank you. And I'm glad to be a voice, I'm glad to have one, as they say.
yeah, it's cool.
It gets pretty close there sometimes, it's just like,
you mean like close to the edge of like nearly not having a
all
voice?
right, am I going to be here tomorrow or next week? It's pretty amazing because, it's like seeing, like, it's evident. I mean, when you go through something like this, it's pretty endless. It's very deep because it's addressed on so many levels: Western medicine, Eastern medicine, all kinds of nutritional information, all of the cultural stuff we have about life-threatening illness and cancer, and what that means to us and our mortality. So it's just like the width and depth of it for a human being, if you're at all conscious, just meaning you're aware, not enlightened or anything like that. Just like if you're awake, you're going to notice, Jesus, this is really a lot. Am I going to make it through this? And will I be here next year? And at my age, obviously, with the coupling with disease state, it's like, that's always a good question for me. So it's really helped me a lot to, look at my mortality and everybody else's. It's given me a lot more compassion for myself and everybody. I just see people now as walking around on borrowed time. And it's like, I can bless the fact that whatever position they're taking in their life, it's purely temporary, because all of mine have been too. So.
Right. Well, I think that's a really good place to start, because I was really curious to catch up and hear you talk, I suppose, a little bit about what this has been like for you, if you're willing to share. And I suppose like really what you were getting into there is like what you were learning from it, and just how it's maybe like shifted and shaped your perspective, because obviously we're in kind of precarious times at the minute on the global scale. And I was just really curious to hear how going through something like this, like what it was that you went through and how it's really affected you and shaped your idea of yourself in the world.
Well, I think there's a lot of levels of it that were interesting to me and informative and teaching opportunities. The first I realized is that if you're in the West, meaning in a Western medical system, I'm talking about the United States because I don't know any other, but the minute you inform them or they inform you that they found cancer, then their paradigm takes over completely. It's like, if you want to participate with what they have to offer, they're very clear. They have protocols, it's very science, and it's just like suddenly your sense of sovereignty or personal autonomy is taken from you, because everything that's done to give you a treatment requires a level of physical, emotional exposure that our normal life does not. So this is true, of course, of any stressful situation. That's why I can easily use this to relate to people who are having feelings about COVID, whether they are sick from it, or they're afraid of the vaccination, or they're angry about the vaccination, or whatever, because I had all of those feelings as well, whether they were rational or irrational. I'm talking about myself on any given occasion. They were my human feelings. And so what I learned to do was try to accept all my states of being as they arise and pass away, knowing they will pass away and new ones will take their place. So it's very different from like, people, be positive and do this. It's like when you're that sick, you can't be anything.
Right.
You have no energy. So it's like, I think everybody, maybe over the age of 30, has had those moments in their life when something has occurred. You can tell your stories for sure, but something has occurred in the sense of your physical capacity and emotional capacity is doubted. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm just saying you go, oh my God, am I going to make it through this? Well, with cancer, the treatment lasts a long time. So the longer the treatment lasts, which is chemotherapy, radiation, the more debilitating it is to your body. It's not like you get it and then it's bad and then, here's the bad. It's like it gets worse and worse because it affects your entire body, including your emotions and your brain.
Yeah.
So it has been a level of acceptance that I thought I would never have to deal with. I thought it was just like, okay, well, you get old and you do a bunch of stuff and then you die, right? And it's like, however you die is okay with me. But, this is months and months of material where there's no confidence anybody has. One, that I will be clean of cancer. Two, that the treatments are efficacious and that the side effects of the treatments will not ruin the rest of my life, which is a big question for people. So the having to, carry all these awarenesses around gave me so much compassion for people who are dealing with even less information, but I understand the emotional and physical content of it much better than I did before. I don't feel detached. I feel in there.
Right. Okay. How do you like keep yourself going in those moments? Is like when you're really kind of deep down in the trenches there, like what do you like? Is there something that you come back to or something that you?
Yeah. I mean, the thing that I learned from cancer is just like, you can't get low enough. Like however, what we taught in medicine path and what I learned basically about praying is praying's when you hit your knee, sink to your knees because you can't deal with it anymore. You see what I'm saying? And it's like the way I came at it for myself when I started praying, almost 40 years ago, it was like, how do you get me down to my knees to make a good prayer? Right. So it's like, I was young and strong when I started. So I was your age. So it's just like, it was like, I didn't have any humility. It was like, I had no need for humility. I was young and strong. Now, all the stuff I was troubled by, that's what I wanted help with. But I wanted it to be selective. Like I could choose the things that I wanted to deal with. So, I felt like even while I was in the medicine, I've been in the medicine for over 30 years, I felt like deep down inside, there was some element of control. And then what I understood from my second bout of cancer, which is what this was, is I'm not in control of anything except my own responses.
Right.
And so my responses, I learned to have all my feelings, like all of them. So if I needed to cry, I would cry my ass off, and then having released that energy, which is the energy of fear and doubt and the sense of loss, I was empty, even if momentarily. And in that moment, I could feel my prayer, my relationship with my creator come back into my body, and I could embrace it. And it's just a feeling more than an idea or, a philosophical position. Because when you're that sick, you can't really pay attention to anything anybody has to say. It's like, it's all like, it's just information.
Yeah, right.
Reading was impossible, watching anything that would be a pleasant diversion was not possible because the symptoms eradicated my ability to focus in that way. So I was sort of like, all input, here I am, and then having to literally respond in a moment to something that would be introduced as brand new. Because the other thing that I learned was it's all chaos. I mean, it's like we're seeing this on the macro level in our culture that just beneath this sense of order and, we know what we're doing and, this is the way this works and this is the way that works, is a gnawing sense of unfairness and a gnawing sense of, victimhood, because, a lot of people are victims of situations that have nothing to do with them. They're mostly about money and power. So, it's like, that's the way I felt. It wasn't about money, but it certainly was about power. And the power was not, corporation so much as it was the power of this disease to destroy my soul, not just kill my body.
Wow.
It really wanted to. This is what I told my wife a month or two into the chemo, which was horrendous. I said, this cancer, it just wants my soul. It's not enough to, it doesn't even care about killing me. It's like, if it can get your soul, then it wins. And so what that showed me was that the clear and simple prayer that applied was, anything in my life is either the love or it's not the love. Cancer is not the love. So I don't have to listen to anything that's not the love. It can upset me for sure, but it's not the truth. So the loving communications that I received, from my creator, but, from my wife, from my friends, from my daughter, from all the people who care and love me, and my healers, all of them, Western and non-Western, I received a lot of good care. And it took me out of my head. I was able, through the process of letting myself have my feelings, getting into a neutral state, a relatively neutral state, and then being open to whatever kind of love would come my way to supplant the terror. Like, this is horrible, I was going to die. Where's this going to go? Because you don't know. So that's pretty much what got me through. And, I all the people who know me and who were present around me during the time said, oh my God, like, you're doing this with such grace. It's it took 35 years to get to the point where I could figure out like how to do what I had to do, in the last 6 months. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, it also showed me that we receive the material that we require to do our life as we go. And we have to remember it might be in there somewhere. And we need to maybe move it a little bit or manipulate it a little bit or learn something else about it or shine a different light or hear somebody else say something about it that can touch our heart and open our heart. Because the key to grace is having an open heart. There is nothing else to it.
And so with that, like, here you talk about letting go of control completely. It's like this idea that we have some control over the stuff that we're doing, and it seems like it's just gradually, like, I feel like relatively healthy at the minute. I've got a bit of a sore shoulder, but I'm kind of largely like I can choose my suffering to some degree. I feel a bit like that, but
yeah,
I pick my poisons maybe. But it seems like what you're saying then, towards that extent, it's like your control becomes narrower, and the only thing that you can really do is just sit with yourself and choose your responses. It's like that. It's a very small thing, but it sounds also incredibly powerful the way you talk about it.
Yeah, it is. And I really liked what you said about, like, right now for you, your main physical complaint is your shoulder. Well, the thing that happens to you when you have cancer in treatment is the combination of the disease trying to assert itself and the horrendousness of these treatments, which I admit saved my life, and I'm grateful. The debility of it, it always is changing, so that you don't have a thing where you can go, okay, tomorrow morning when I wake up, I'm going to feel like this, and here's how I'm going to deal with it, because that's the way we deal with everything, really. So if you have a shoulder problem, I got a shoulder problem too. So it's just like, when I get into the bed at night, it's just like, okay, I'm not laying on my left side, blah, 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 all these little adjustments that we make. And so fundamentally, I'm in control of my suffering, right? Because that's what you're talking about. I have some control over my suffering. So I don't know how to explain it, but I feel more powerful because I can keep my shoulder from keeping me awake, even on this relatively small level, or I can put some CBD or something on it, and get some relief from the pain. But when you're being assaulted by an infinite variety of symptoms and the introduction of new substances, which get more and more debilitating and powerful, et cetera, you don't know how you're going to feel in an hour, which is really weird, because that's when you learn to behave yourself, because otherwise you're going to F your life up. So, when I was in the cancer treatment centers, I would go in there. It's mostly women, it's mostly women who are middle-aged and older, mostly breast cancer, some of the bravest people you'll ever meet in your life. And the thing that I learned from them was, my wife explained to me, is they're like mothers and grandmothers. They have lives that require them to externalize their love with other people. They don't want to go. It's like, I'm a man. That's not what I do. I give a lot of love to people, but it's very, it's like a sword as opposed to this vestal kind of love. Nice. And so they were the bravest people in the thing. They're just like, they're not even brave. They're just like, how you doing today? Just like matter of fact and present, et cetera, et cetera. I learned a lot from sitting with them. It's just like, the fuck, I'm sitting here feeling sorry for myself, even if they're breathing, they're, texting their grandchildren. And, it's just like, I want to be like that. I don't want to be this manly man fighting cancer. I don't want to have a battle with cancer. How could I win? Right? It's fucking cancer. Right? It's like having a battle with an atomic bomb. Yeah. So if you luck out, you can go into, non-disease states in your body. And then, if you're lucky, you can maintain it for a while. So there's no cure for cancer. It's just a relief, because the telomeres, the incipient cell forms of cancer, don't ever leave the body. So a lot of people don't know that. You tell somebody, they cure cancer. You can't cure cancer. Not now, but maybe in the future. But this is also a thing about, you start thinking about your life, like the course your life is taking. So, you're getting ready to be middle-aged, which is the biggest part of your life. There's a lot of stuff that happens. Most of it is great. A lot of it you fuck up really badly. You can't help it because it's your job, right? You're trying to learn how to be Tom, and right. Tom's a powerful, smart, passionate guy, and people like Tom, and they want to do whatever Tom wants to do with him. And then Tom suddenly goes, "No, if I want to do that anymore," because you're not old. You see what I'm saying?
Mm.
You're not going to say, this is what I do. This is how I do it, et cetera, et cetera. You're not attached to that. So it's like you're still in the state where how do I feel about this? How do I want to feel about this? And there are things that have yet to occur that you don't know what your response is going to be. And for me too, I've never died before in this lifetime. I've never, I don't want to go into all the things that I haven't suffered from, but there's plenty. So you can't plan your response. It's like you can't pre-mourn your lover's death. You can feel sad about it if you want to, but you see what I'm saying? There's no way to button it down.
It's like it happens as it happens. And I guess, so when you said you've been preparing your whole life for something like this, like the things that you do to prepare, I know you're like very big on prayer and intention and just kind of like keeping that, it feels like a very kind of masculine focus, like in intent and focusing on that prayer. Like what else is it that what would you say to somebody like me who's coming to middle age to prepare for something wild, like getting old, I suppose?
Yeah, I think that the thing that I learned is like if you're particularly attached to a thought or a physical state of being or an emotion, probably you should let it go.
Right.
And the way you let it go is make a prayer about it. So is this really useful for me? Because if it hurts, if it's emotionally and physically painful for you to carry forth this thought, not just but about life, you know what I'm saying? Because there are a lot of people walking around right now thinking the world sucks. The world absolutely does not suck. That is not the problem, right? It's like the world is amazing. And you sailed all over, more about it than I do. It's like, it is beyond amazing. It's just like, kind of like, whoa. And it makes us so small, but then we get around other people and people's circumstances, and we start to feel like we're the same size as the world. We have to figure everything out. We have to do everything right. And we can't. We're an experiment. You see what I'm saying? Human beings are here to learn how to be better human beings. That's it. There is no end game. I know a lot of really amazing, sacred, powerful old medicine people. They would be the first to tell you that is not the be all end all of anything. This is just the path their life took. So it's like when we get over that, how we identify ourselves is who we are, or even what we are, then we're in the healing process. And so I started that a long time ago because I understood I had a delusion about who I was that had been contributed to by the way I was raised, by the culture I came into, by my race, blah, 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 all these other things. And it was painful for me. And I wanted to learn how to love. And I wanted to learn how to be peaceful with myself and with other people. So that was the pretext. But that has given me an ability. I don't know if you call it ability. That's not fair because it sounds like an achievement, but it's given me practice in noting that I do have that connection. I never feel like I'm disconnected from God. And if I do, then if I have a moment, I'm going to say, where are you? And I will feel the presence of God. And it's not a voice. There's no Jesus thing. It's not like that at all. It's just a feeling in the body that I'm not alone. And it feels like this. I'm right here. And the other thing I learned is, God doesn't do medical. You can't make God stop them giving you chemo treatments because you've had enough. God doesn't do that. But, God is there with you when you're dealing with it. And God provides you with the ability to ask for help, not just from God, but people, which I was doing in space. I mean, I've never, spent so much time saying to people, I'm sorry, but I'm really, uncomfortable. Could you help me? Like in hospital, and them going, absolutely. And taking the time out to help me and help me be comfortable. Or if I was confused about something, explain. I never did that. I was very macho about that whole approach. And, I take macho in a John Wayne sense. I just didn't want to ask other people to help me. I didn't want to be that vulnerable.
How do you feel about that now? Like, you feel like you would have wanted to do that differently?
Yeah. So, Tom, you see what I'm saying? It's just like once you get into the thing, what you realize is it helps just love. I like love. I mean, that's what I'm here for. That's what I came for. That's why I started on this path. I want to give and receive love the best way I can. I realize anytime someone helps you willingly, that's some love from them in the form, whatever form they have it. Somebody brings you a warm blanket when you're freezing your ass off. That's the love. Somebody brings you some ice chips when you're so dehydrated you can't talk. That's the love. You see what I'm saying? A smile, a touch, a pat. You see what I'm saying? When a doctor looks you in the eye when they're talking to you, and you can see them enjoying your personality, that's the love. So it's just like all it does is just breaks down the barrier between oneself as subject object, and being the full participant in your own life. Whether you're living, dying, getting better, whatever it is, it's just like, I'm here, and it takes a lot of courage. And I don't mean to imply I'm courageous, or it takes a huge breakdown to get to the point where you're asking for help. Whereas in some instances in the past where you never would have. So it's like, it's a bending of the knee. And so God is not, I don't have to ask God to adjust my chemo. I have to ask a person to do that. But God is giving me the strength to say to this person, look, I don't know what to do about this, because a lot of times in medical situations, patients have no idea even what they're experiencing. The feelings that chemicals engender in the body are very unfamiliar and very scary. And so it's like, you have to ask for help. You have to ask for knowledge. Sometimes you have to tell people in a really kind way. It's like, I don't understand. Could you explain that to me a little bit better? Or, in my case, could you talk to my wife? Because I don't understand what you're saying. She's a lot smarter than me. So this is a thing that I've cultivated. I would never not ask for help now. I ask my daughter, my 12-year-old daughter, for help now all the time. And she loves it. She went, I love helping you, Dad. Why didn't you ask me before? I said, I didn't know. She's 12. She has no problem asking for help at all.
But I guess it's like, sometimes I feel like we can get into that place. This was a big learning for me as well, and I think I'm still learning it. Is that this idea that your needs are a burden on someone else? And I suppose it's like, sometimes that maybe is true, but it just feels like now people actually like helping each other. It seems like people really do like helping each other. If you kind of come sincerely and with a bit of humility and appreciation and that kind of thing, it's just, people really enjoy that.
Yeah, and gratitude. People love for, just for people to go, thank you. Thank you. That was so helpful. It's just like, my God, it's like people, particularly now, because it's so stressful because of pandemic. So when you go to the hospital, of course, it's a microcosm of the societal stress, but it's very intense. These people are there, and it's their lives are at stake. They have their families and their concerns, and people are behaving badly towards them and yelling at them and refusing to follow certain protocols and stuff that are designed to protect the lives of the people who are there, not just the patients. So these people are under a lot of stress. So it's just like, when somebody gives them a little bit of warmth, they're like, thank you, they can use it.
Shifts like their orientation. It kind of changes the compass, like by a few degrees,
Yeah, I was in the hospital a couple of months ago, actually, pardon me. And I had some kind of some kind of medical crisis. I don't even know what it was, because they couldn't figure out what it was. But I was in the hospital for like 10 hours, and you can't take your family with you, right? So you're literally all alone. I mean, they'll let you have your cell phone, but if you're debilitated, can't really call, on your cell phone and stuff like that. So I was in there for a really long time, and I was kind of freaking out. And this orderly came on duty after I'd been there about half that time. His name was Walter Bautista. I've never forgotten him. I pray for him every night, because Walter came in, and the first thing he did is he looked me right in the eye and he goes, what are you doing? How are you doing? What can I do for you to make you more comfortable? Oh, the hell's this, right? Walter Bautista. So I immediately memorized his name, because I want to ask God to do something for him, So, we're talking all for hours, just on and off and connecting, and he's telling me what it's like to be him and what it's like to work in the hospital under the stress. But, and we're like two loving men, who are able to connect in this really beyond stressful circumstance where, people who are being wheeled by, who are basically dead, who died on ventilators. So it's like, that's what's going on outside the window of my room. And it's all, this is what these people are working in, sometimes 12, 16 hours a day. So it's like, to be able to build a bridge with this guy, not out of my victimhood, but just gratitude and love, and listening to him, and acknowledging his humanity and his relationship to his family and his forebears, et cetera, we opened up something that was very healing. So when I left the hospital, I don't know that the symptoms had abated that I went in with, but I came out with a heart like this. And my wife said to me, "Oh, you look great." She said, "What happened?" I said, "Walter Batista, dude." Right? And of course, she knowing me, I think she probably pretty much knew what I was talking about. I met this guy. He was amazing. He was so kind. He said, and she said to me, "He's just a reflection of you, man." It's like, that's what we manifest at best, is when we drop our own resistances, we manifest the people who reflect best the form of love we need.
Right. So dropping.
It's familiar.
Yeah. That seems like a really key idea, dropping resistances, because I was going to ask you, I think like today we're very, we don't seem to have a relationship with, say, creation, all of creation, creator, God, whatever you would want to call it, in the same way that you do. You seem like very connected to that, or connected to something that feels very warm in that sense. And I'm just wondering what your take would be on how, like, what is it that prevents people from feeling that mostly? Like, how do they kind of block themselves off from that?
It's a good question. I mean, my wife's phrase about that is, she said, "We think we need to be God. Like, we're so amazing. Like, we're such astonishing physical, emotional, and moral beings that we are godlike." I mean, we invented God. We invented the idea of God. We invented the form of God, because God obviously has no form per se. And so it's not much of a step to go, well, since I'm so this, I should be able to figure everything out. And how that manifests is, we don't want anybody to tell us what to do. And we don't want to ask anybody for help. And we communicate that to our children. We communicate that within our communities. And then somehow what is held up for praise is that we don't ask for help. So then we make up reasons with our very powerful brains, the same ones we admire so much, about why we don't need any help. And usually it's because somebody else, fill in the blank, doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what your position is, because these things are true for everybody except the people that it's not true for. Mm. So it's like, there's vaxxers and anti-vaxxers. Who lives in the middle? Right? So there's a lot of reasons to be an anti-vaxxer, and there's a lot of reasons to be a vaxxer. What's the reason where you can love the vaxxers and love the anti-vaxxers without in any way, shape, or form ascribing to the theories that they're espousing for the reasons why they're behaving badly? Because they're behaving badly. They're yelling and screaming and blocking people from doing stuff. This is their job, and they're hurting people, et cetera, et cetera. It's just like, that's the part I want to eliminate. The thoughts they have, they're good thoughts. If you don't want it, don't get it. It's like, it'll all sort itself out. It won't be fun, but it'll sort itself out. But all this enmity, all this is done is compound division. And, this is the nature. The nature is for people to go, "No, I know what's best." It's like, I'm not so sure I know what's best. It was easier for me. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I've got a lot of things going in my life. But when I came to Creator, when I was in my early 40s, it was like, I needed it. I needed some warmth. I needed something, because I had tried everything to impose George's will on the universe, and the universe refused. It just said, "What's the matter with you, dude?" And it put me into a condition of despair. It's just, I didn't know what I was doing. Literally, I did not know what I was doing with my life. And so I was able to start praying. When I started praying, the connection was really easy, because I wasn't looking for anything other than just that, this feeling I'm not alone. Then I could feel like, okay, I don't have to figure this out, because a lot of stuff you can't figure out. You just can't. You have to wait and see what's going to happen.
That's like you're giving up control thing. It's like,
yeah,
I don't know how to do it.
When you're young, you're powerful, and you have a lot of testosterone. It's very hard to not do stuff. You understand what I'm saying? If there's a move you could make, I would do that, because that's what I did. You see what I'm saying? It's like, there's no way to, at 30 or 40 or 50 to be able to say, "I'm not doing that." It's like you might be learning to do that, and sometimes you make good choices and occasionally make a bad choice. But as you get older, what's going to happen is if you have a prayer about it, it's going to get better and easier for you, because your resistance to your vulnerability decreases as you receive rewards for your vulnerability, which is love. That's the only reward. Yeah.
Oh,
Once you get, you're not going to make any money off your vulnerability unless you're a pop star or something. But it's like the whole thing is you just want the love. So when people say, well, I feel like I shouldn't ask for help, it's like what we're really saying is I really shouldn't ask for help. Whatever I have inside me should sustain me. That's ridiculous. Right. We want all the love we can get, dude. All of it, in it.
I think when I hear you talk about it, I get this sense of like, I really like this idea of what brings you to your knees, like what brings you to a knee. There's a sense of like humility that comes with that, and humiliation almost is a gateway to humility. And that, I feel like the stem of that word human as well, humane, humanity, it's all part of that same stem, it feels like. And it's like the soft part where the love can get in, and it can't get in if you're kind of super fast and busy and hard all the time, and think you've very much up here with the boxes and the separation and all of this kind of thing. And it's
and it doesn't mean you're wrong about anything. It's like your opinion about anything is just as good as anybody else's opinion, because somebody could say, well, that's not true scientifically. The people who don't care about if it's true scientifically do not care. So it's like making an argument based on science or not science. That's ridiculous. What are we doing? If you don't believe in the methodology, then I can't convince you, well, because the methodology says. I can't. It's like all I can do is listen to that person and go, well, thanks for telling me that.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Because if I'm angry and engaging with somebody over something that I absolutely have no control over, which is how another person thinks, okay, and I don't want to, that is not my business. No one in the medicine world ever told me what to do or how to think, except mechanically. Go over and pick that wood up and move it over here and stack it beautifully. You see what I'm saying? But nobody ever said, you should go do this. You should go do that. Nobody ever did that to me. So I don't do that, nor am I interested in doing it. So as time proceeds, what happens is you go through your middle age and you have a practice, say, of trying to not tell people what they ought to do. Right. Then the thoughts you have about what people ought to do, they come up and you go, never mind, because I'm not going to do anything about that. You start to learn to look at your thoughts without entertaining them, because they love a party. If you throw a party for your bad thoughts, all your bad thoughts want to attend, right?
Right.
Yeah. Oh, party.
Right. And these kind of, they exacerbate each other, and they seem to like gain a kind of momentum. I remember you saying on the last podcast we did, it was something along the lines of like, all of the stuff that you don't want, you just put it in the place where all of the stuff that you don't want goes, like, I don't know, the attic or whatever. And you don't need to really go back to that. You don't need to go and invest and try to figure that out and pick your way through and understand where it comes from. It's like, it's just there. It's just like floating around, and you can either kind of turn towards it, or you can turn towards what the love is, or like the way you described that, turn towards the love.
Yeah. And, everyone who is walking around, and I include myself in this, in the past, who's creating a cause and effect between the upset of their childhood, just for an example, and the way they're choosing to not behave well as an adult. It's like, that's a very accurate correlation. The problem is that we don't like it ourselves when we don't behave well, and nobody else does either. So it's like, if you want the love, you're gonna have to change your behavior. So sometimes we don't even know what to do to change the behavior. So that's when our relationship with Creator comes in, because when we're doing the right thing, even if it's nothing, it feels the same. It's like when we're doing the wrong thing, which doesn't mean a bad thing, it just means the thing that's not going to work for us. Okay, we feel tension in our body. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? Because that energy in our body begins to predominate, and then as we feed it, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. The same way as if we were working out with weights and we, kept doing our curls for a year, eventually you're going to get some big whatever's biceps. But it's just like, you have to understand you're working it out. So if your practice is, this thought doesn't serve me, I really would like some help with this thought. Not getting impatient with yourself, because sometimes they're amazing thoughts, even if they're bleak. They're pretty literary. I'm a poet. I love bleak. It's like bleak's as good with me as anything. But understanding this won't serve this moment. So you can be a poet and have bleak thoughts, but you don't have to live in them. Then you can write for poems, which makes them very useful. So this generation, which includes your generation, my daughter is a little older than you, is part of this generation, not settling for ways we've reacted to things in the past, but actually having an intention to do better. I don't want to be so reactive with the people I love, my children, my friends, et cetera, et cetera. And then in order to do that, you have to understand how reactive you are, which is the humility. When you catch yourself in that moment and you're like, you're doing all that stuff and, flipping around and stuff like that. And you realize, oh my God, I hate this. And you realize I could double down or I could just stop. Right. And the ability of a human being to stop is astonishing. I just stop.
So this seems like on one side, are you talking about being reactive and maybe being quite, what I get from that is like kind of aggressive, this kind of thing, and just like flipping out. But what would you say to, like, I work with a lot of people who have this kind of people pleasing tendency, and they do believe that they're doing everything right and they're trying to do everything right. And if they can just behave well enough, this is their kind of paradigm. And I know, because I've come from this background as well. It's like, if I can just get everything right, then I'm going to have like a problem-free life. That's kind of the idea, really. And I get the sense they're like quite frustrated about, I feel like I'm doing everything right, but things are just not working out for me. And I don't understand why. And I feel like I'm being maybe abandoned by like God in some sense. It's like, I feel I can't please this thing enough. And so what would you say to that?
I would just say, from my own experience, your life is working itself out. And this is the way what's happening is your life itself is digging up all the stuff that's not working for you. And it's saying, this doesn't work for you. It's not a mean thing. It's not like, no, I don't think you want to go there, Tom. It's not going to work for you. Especially as you get older and you've tried some things and they didn't work, and I can't go back there. It's like, I can't do that. I have to let that go. Sometimes we have to let go and move forward without knowing we don't have anything else to move to. So people who are people pleasers, they'll just move on to the next people pleasing opportunity, because that's all internal for them. They might get some cues from other people. You're being a good boy or a good girl or whatever it is, but that is not really what makes them feel good. What makes them feel good is the feeling in their body. They like that feeling. They condition themselves to that sense of self effacement, if you will, of sacrificing oneself. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if it makes you feel really good and it's a loving thing for you, go ahead and do it. Apparently it doesn't, though. So, the antidote is really to start to fail. Like, if you're in the process of people pleasing, I would say right now, for all the people that I know who have a prayer about how they want their life to turn out, that really what creation is trying to show us is you can love other people and you can help them, and you never have to be codependent. You do not enable bad behavior in other people. And it's like, many people think that's complicated. I don't find it complicated at all. If your kid's running around with a sharp knife, you just have to stop her, somehow get that knife out of her hand, put the knife away, then you deal with the aftermath. But, it's just like, we're always trying to manage everybody as though everyone knows what they're doing and we don't. So it's like, nobody knows what they're doing. That's what's so interesting about life.
Yeah, right. I guess it's a good distinction to make between, so behaving badly is the way you use it. It sounds like it's more like, is it what you like? Is it something that you want? Is it giving you what you want in your life? And it's not like because I know that this like good, bad behavior thing for a lot of people with people pleasing issues, it's like there's just a shame about everything. This shame that just sucks you in, and every time it's very hard.
The feeling of shame is how we condition ourselves to do stuff that doesn't make us feel good. So the shame is so great that you said that, because you can do really evil stuff because you like the feeling of shame, or you can just be codependent, even though codependent is do a lot of damage in this world. It's just like, once you understand that what has happened is we get addicted to feeling states. We have reasons why we practice these things that are in our head, but first comes the feelings. First comes, I have a feeling of shame in my body. It's familiar to me. I can make it bigger. I can't really make it smaller, but I can make it more intense. Okay. And then really, the humility is when you understand you're not really pleasing anybody, and you're definitely not pleasing God, who could give a crap about the stuff that you do. Almost all the stuff people are doing is mechanical anyways. It's not even very interesting. Helping is when someone is suffering and they ask you for help and you might be able to do something for them. And it's always humbling, always, because they're a person and you're not going to tell them what to do and you're not going to do their life for them. Okay. This is a huge discipline. So it's much easier to tell other people what to do, to try to do their lives for them, et cetera, except it doesn't give you the feeling. So the feeling of just giving and receiving love, listening to what other people have to say without being reactive, understanding that you can stop even if you're just having reactive thoughts, you can just tell your brain, oh, you need to stop. These thoughts do not entertain me. Thank you. Right. They're conditioned feelings and thoughts that you've had for a long time. They're not your fault, but you definitely are in charge of them. So once you get that, then that is the reason why you do it. You do it because there's a feeling of connection that you can have that's like a note that an orchestra plays. And the other thing sounds like cacophony. So if you like cacophony, go ahead and play that. You're allowed to do that because there's 7 billion of us and we all get to figure out what we want to do. But if that's not what you like, then you have to search for what you like. You have to search for the love, search for the peace, search for the ways to let go of things that don't really work for you so that you can get softer and softer and allow your life to unfold. Then you won't feel like you're fighting your life.
Right. So I think for like a lot of the times in the work we do, you talk about that in relationship where you're just asking somebody, how are you doing? Like, can I help you? This kind of thing. And a lot of the times in the work, we're getting people to do that just for themselves, is like show up and say, how are you doing today? Can I help you from this like internal standpoint? Because it seems like they've been so used to so conditioned to feel like what they want and need is wrong, is a burden, is something that is bad. They shouldn't want this. They shouldn't be doing this. They shouldn't be feeling this particular feeling. This particular feeling is dangerous. And it's like, I like the clarity of just being able to stop and cut through that and just say, okay, well, how am I doing? How can I help myself here, and use that for like self-awareness and then social awareness to people around me. How can I help someone else better their lives as well?
Yeah, and I think that the thing that the medicine teaches is there's not really any subject object relationship. The person who's asking for help is not the object. The person who's offering the help is not the subject. It's like, it's a relationship. It's like somebody else, if you're, a healer, all healers is someone who is healing. It's not somebody who heals others. There's a lot of healers in this world who drive cabs. It's just like, there's amazing people in this world who are healers. It's like healing is when you are on the path to letting go of the things that do not serve you so that you can serve the love that's in your body, because that's what feels good. So the path that you walk is as you go through your life, you're going to try different things, and they're not wrong or bad or ugly, or, do you see what I'm saying? They're just the things you're trying. So they might work for you. I don't know. I have no opinion whatsoever, because people do all kinds of strange things. And I look at them now and I go, whoa, that turned out to be really cool. So it's like, you have to understand, and many of them you'll go, I don't want to do that anymore, because that doesn't produce the feeling I want. So it's like, I'm chasing a feeling. You see what I'm saying? And that seems to benefit a lot of people. So if it's benefiting other people when I'm doing it, I know my wife does that because she is an expert at that, like how to love and support people without enabling them, and be really clear and tell people when no, it's like, I can't help.
That's like, sounds like very clear boundaries as well, like a yes and a no. And I think that's one thing that I think when I first met you, I was very like struck by that. I always kind of knew where I was with you. It was like, this was a yes, this was a no, this was a kind of a maybe ask me later. And it just felt very clear. And I think that helps relax people a lot. It just feels very safe. It's like, okay, I know where I stand with this. And it's interesting you say like chasing a feeling, because I feel a lot of times it's almost like you say this emotional addiction becomes so identified with this particular feeling that reiterates itself again and again, and then we all come up with all kinds of stories to justify why we should feel that feeling and keep feeling that feeling to keep this kind of homeostasis of an identity going. And because that feels is somehow safe, even though it might be insidious and it might be miserable, it's like safer to be miserable than it is to take that step off the edge and into the unknown, where there's maybe other dangerous things that that we feel might hurt us. It's like I think we don't really have a good sense of trust with the unknown necessarily. Or
yeah, and it's like, don't diminish the effect of the immense mirror of our culture on that, because a lot of people are behaving very badly and they get rewarded with a lot of money for it. We're in a global dialogue right now between the kindness and the not kindness and the love and the not love about everything. So it's like, if you see, oh my God, the whole planet, everyone is fighting this great battle. This is what Plato said 2,000 years ago. Everyone you meet is fighting a great battle within themselves. It's like, that's what we're doing. So the sense that we're the only ones doing it is the thing that makes it really hard to learn to take responsibility for it, because we isolate by not asking for help. And the other thing we do is we explain why we're messed up. We make up stories based on all kinds of material that's very interesting about why we're messed up. Is why we're messed up more important than the fact we're behaving in ways that don't make us feel good about ourselves? Okay, it takes a while over the arc of time to understand this is more important than this. This is important, but it only goes so far. What are you going to do with that? If you write a novel, maybe you could make some money off of it, or you could write songs or something. There's ways to make money off of it. But there's no way to make yourself happy about it, because what you're doing is you're living in the doom scroll of your interpretation of your life, which has brought you to this perfect moment. If you like this moment, great, thanks God. If you don't like this moment, I wonder why I don't like this moment. So each moment is available for that. Each moment, which is vast.
You say like each moment's available to kind of give up the current thing that is causing resistance to the moment itself. Something like that.
Because think about if you were, I could just, I basically used this earlier, but I just said, when you have cancer and you're in treatment, you don't know how you're going to feel in an hour. You don't. And sometimes you feel a feeling that you've never had before, and you don't even know where it might even be, because that's how strange the body gets when it's at the effect of all these chemicals and radiation and stuff. So it's like, that's a good time to understand. I have this moment. I can either submit to this moment and freak out because I do not know what's going on and nobody else does. And I feel all alone and isolated, and my wife's not home, and all the ways. And, my God, this is just like my childhood when I was laying in my bed when I was 9. And you see what I'm saying? It's like, you can do that. I can do that. It's not a problem. Okay. The thing is like, that does not contain the feeling that I want. Only feeling I want is connection. If I have the feeling of connection, I can wait to see what's going to happen next. And I can ask for help, because everybody is an agent of my prayer. If I say, Tom, could you help me? I'm assuming, I'm not asking you randomly. I'm saying, Tom, I know you, you know me. Could you help me do this one thing? Expecting that you might want to help me do that. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. It's like that a sense of connection rather than just, I've got to ask somebody for help. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like, it's intentional. It's not desperate. So sometimes we're desperate, we're drowning or something's happening and we have to yell for help. But mostly in life, it's not like that at all. It's just like, God, I really don't know what I'm doing. I need to make some changes. What about this thing? And say yes to some things you haven't said yes to before, and say no to some of those things that couple with the shame that, we all bear. It's like, that's the deal.
So when you speak about connection, you're talking about connection externally, or connection with the thing that's going on inside of you, like connection with
Yeah,
the feeling inside you, right?
yeah. And I want to say this because it's not really about praying. I mean, I don't really pray very often at all. We pray every night with my daughter, and it's really what we're doing is talking about how we feel about stuff, and acknowledging each other fundamentally. That's the prayer we do, which isn't really praying. It's just it's intimacy.
Mm.
So, prayer is the thing you carry around in your gut, where you spent so much time asking God for help and seeing observable reality help you, then you start to understand how it works. And it's like, then you don't have to worry about it anymore. The only time to worry about it is when you're having those moments when you're feeling so isolated because it's all too much. And sometimes it is too much. Then you go, God, are you still here? And then you get that feeling again. So it's not a perfect system. We're people, we're animals. We have a lot of feelings, but it is possible to have a practice to return to that the best way you can, and to have a good life, a happy life that's full of love and intimacy. I have one. I'm very happy about my life in spite of all the crappy stuff that's happened to me and from me. So it's like, it's possible. I know that's true. And it wasn't that hard. What was hard was understanding or noting what wasn't serving me.
Right. And then letting that stuff go, I guess, right? Yeah.
Trying to formulate the willingness to go, is that a thing even? Right? Because sometimes we don't know. We think it's our personality. Quite often people say, that's the way I am. It's like, I've been holding medicine ceremonies intensely for over 20 years. I've never seen anybody be who they thought they were when they came into the ceremony. They're always this amazing, loving, powerful, responsible, dynamic. You understand what I'm saying? It's always that way. So when they came in, they were like, because that's the way they were feeling about themselves. But it's not true. And the medicine knows the truth. Medicine goes, why are you treating yourself like that? Because it's so unlike that.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like having medicine ceremonies. The medicine is a conditioning agent. Really, what it does is it creates some elevation, which is a sense of, I don't have to live in this. Okay. I could live here. You see what I'm saying? I can return to here. And then you start to develop some faith. This is actually where I live most of the time. Here, it's a painful place and I won't go there. So you can't avoid it, because when you relax, you're going to have all of your thoughts and feelings, even when they're terrible. But when you realize you could ask for help in any moment, because these are not the thoughts and feelings that you wish to have to sustain your prayer for your life, okay, you'll always get some help. And you have to practice. Everybody has to do it for themselves.
Right.
That's why religion doesn't work. That's why this is not a religion. It's just a prayer method.
Yeah, because when you talk about, say, you're identifying the things that are not working for you and like trying to let those go, what kind of comes to me is this idea, well, I'm the way that I let that go, it's like trying to let that go almost seems like a contradiction, because you're like trying. The more effort you put in, you're still focusing on that thing. And it sounds like what you're saying is more, well, I'm going to try to let that, I'm not going to like try to let that go per se. I'm just going to keep refocusing my attention on the things that feel like appreciation, that feel like love, that feel like they're bringing that kind of warmth into my life. And that just that gradually over time becomes my default. Whatever sensations I experience, so like I have a place that I can go where I can just feel that sense of appreciation.
Yeah. And, a couple of things that are really useful are just, one is gratitude, and the other is telling people the truth without involving them in your stuff. So, you're having a hard time and you're in an emotional situation with someone and you realize, okay, I'm doing this thing. I don't like it. I may be right or I may be wrong, but this is not the way I want to be in my life. Then you can look at the other person, irregardless of what it is you've been talking about. Okay, those are our ideas and we're communicating with a lot of feeling. And you say, God, I am really sorry. This is, you're important to me, but this is not important to me. I'm getting completely overamped. I don't want to do that. It's not the kind of person that I want to be. And I'm really sorry. And I'm sure they'll always be shocked, because they're still shocked when I do it. But it's like, it's not a problem, because you're not dismissing them. You're not dismissing their argument. You're just saying, the way this me doing this makes me feel is like I suck. And I don't want to feel that way. I want to feel like I'm a person who has a prayer, who can ask for help and stop doing something that doesn't serve me, because you have to stop. The other person or situation will never stop. Is Trump ever going to stop? No. The Republicans ever going to stop? No. Is disease states ever going to stop? No. There is no perfect order. It's just not like that. So we got to learn to deal with all of it. And we can, not by ourselves, but with the help of a power that's greater than ourselves.
Yeah. I guess it seems at the minute like there's a lot of people the thing that unites people in some senses, where you're talking about like vax or anti-vax before, it's like, well, both sides seem scared, like both sides seem afraid, but they're just afraid of different things. But I feel like if there's a way to like stop and notice that and actually listen, I guess like stop and notice and listen, it's very easy to get caught up in that fear and get kind of barreled over by it and carried away with it, and have it escalate and escalate and escalate and like keep projecting it outwards and do that subject object thing that you were talking about.
That's really what's happening right now, is the rise of racism and anti-Semitism, and all that stuff is really, people are uncomfortable and scared, and they're looking for somebody to blame. And that's what they do, is they find weak people, the old Asian people and all the other people that are being beat up and picked on, et cetera, et cetera. They're scared. They don't process it as fear. They process as anger. So it's like, then they have a reason to act out. So they're not going around going, everything's messed up because of old Asian people. That's not what they're doing. What they're doing is they're enraged because they feel powerless. And this is all too overwhelming for them. And they're right, because, I live a relatively privileged existence, and I'm overwhelmed by all of it. Most of the people that I know, irregardless of their circumstance, are overwhelmed by what's going on in the world today. My wife likes to point out that whatever's going on in the world has always been going on in the world, and that we're way more aware of it now because of social media. Mm-hmm. And I think there's some truth to that. But what we're trying to do is heal ourselves up as individuals, because all healing is really local. Then it becomes global.
Yeah.
So an example is like, somebody goes to a demonstration or a protest or whatever, and then somebody says something they don't like, and they've had it, and they swing, boom, like that. And then all of these people are going to be reacting to that energy. People are going to be fighting, not fighting, forming new opinions, more anger, et cetera, et cetera. But what if at that moment, when that perfectly normal person, I'm not talking about someone who's a psychopath, I know a perfectly normal person became overwhelmed by their fear that this is so out of control that it's destroying everything that they love, and they just went, no, that is not the kind of person that I want to be. And, they pulled the fist down and they said, God bless you, took a couple of breaths and walked away, maybe went home. That would be a little more productive toward the global realization of peace than him hitting somebody or her.
Right. So I guess it's like, it seems like what you're saying is this, our inability to deal with a sense of powerlessness, or our capacity to deal with powerlessness, and how like helpless and vulnerable it makes us feel, which is why we kind of act out to try to get some of that power back, try to like feel like we're powerful, like we have some kind of autonomy or something in the world that we can cling on to. And it sounds like the real source of power is to step into that vulnerability, or like really be there, so you can be soft enough to have a real relationship with something bigger.
Yeah, and it's uncomfortable, because the reason people created religions so that they would have a sense of belonging with a power that's greater than themselves, which is kind. And initially the power greater than the people was not kind at all. It was punishing and punitive and angry, and it was an old man with a beard and blah, 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 all of which. And then Jesus came around, and now somehow over the last 2,000 years, whatever it was Jesus was teaching has been turned into a bunch of rules about things that he didn't talk about. So it's like, I can be really angry about that, because personally, I'm not a Christian, but I am very much, Jesus is a great teacher of mine personally, one of the great wisdom teachers of all time, and certainly someone who had that feeling and knew how to obtain it and keep it. And so I'm a huge admirer and a follower of the things that I believe Jesus was trying to teach. But these other people, just because they have been so scared, the habit and practice of humankind has been to organize in groups of like-minded people for good reasons as well as bad reasons. So part of the bad reason is that when dogma supersedes the love, it's destructive. And so it isn't about people, it isn't about believing in God or not believing in God. It's just about, how are you praying to God? Are you praying to God by acting out in front of your friends who all share the same ideas? That's people. That's not God. Okay. Or, are you talking to God and asking God, and God would say, okay, this doesn't make you feel good, and this does make you feel good. Okay, what are you going to do about it? And then having to take on the tremendous responsibility of, could you help me? To whatever or whomever, doesn't matter what the form is, and then noting that you do stop doing that thing and you back up and you realize that is not going to solve that problem, not in any way, shape, or form. So it's like this, I gave you an extreme example, political violence, whatever, but this is true on the most fundamental level. Everybody, your kids, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whatever it is, you're they, you're them, you're it. It's just like we are all in conflict over relationships because we feel scared,
Right.
How many times have you been scared and you knew you were scared and you couldn't just say to somebody, God, I'm sorry, I get so scared. It's just like,
So
that's better than yelling.
Right. Because when it comes down to this blame thing, you mentioned before, like we're always looking for somebody to blame, and it seems like the blame thing is an inability to deal with the feeling itself. It's like I have to put it out there onto somebody else, or if nobody else will accept it, I will have to turn it inwards on myself and start blaming myself for having an experience, like having an experience of a feeling, which in itself is really, it's just an experience, right? It's just some kind of sensorial experience. It's not a good or a bad thing per se. But our discomfort with the feeling of powerlessness it gives us maybe makes us want to push it outwards or push it inwards and say, well, it's my fault that this is happening to me, or it's their fault that this is happening to me, something like that.
Yeah, and you use the word discomfort, which is really, the problem is people are talking about white privilege. Privilege is the belief that you should be free from discomfort.
Right.
That life should not contain discomfort. The truth about life, and this is all spiritual teachings, I'm not talking about religious teachings, but right. If you read spiritual teachings, most particularly the Buddha, made it so clear that even George could understand it. Life is change. That's the fact. So anything you don't like, you can change. You have the ability to do that through your mindful focus. Whether you meditate or you pray or you do darshan or you chant or you go do yoga, it doesn't matter. Any way you can make that connection to where that connection becomes more important to you or to me than acting out and being right about stuff is going to contribute to my own peace. Anything that contributes to my own peace contributes to the peace of everyone around me. Right. The work that I've done over the last 30 years, which was all for me. It was just for me because I had to do it. I had to do it or maybe not make it. Has helped literally thousands of people who would be happy to tell you that's so. I'm not saying that to brag. It's all inadvertent. You see, I didn't go out to help people. I never had that sense. What I wanted to do was have a conscious connection with whatever was more powerful than me that could teach me how to live my life. And so this is how this path, that prayer led me to this path, which works really well for me. It all makes a lot of sense to me. My brothers and sisters in this way all make a lot of sense to me. But it's not the only way. It's just a path. Mm-hmm. So when people are looking for a path, don't look for a religion. This is not a religion. What is it? Something that you can do to remind yourself that you're God's favorite child.
God's favorite child. I could imagine that's a difficult expression for some people, probably.
Work toward that. It's just like, because you can tell people, I do this all the time. I say, well, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but the truth is you're really God's favorite child. God thinks you're just the bomb. Right. And it's hard on people. It really is.
Yeah. I think especially for those people who have, I guess they feel like what would you say like about abandonment, like abandonment by feeling abandoned by God, feeling abandoned by love, or just this sense of like, I feel like it wasn't there when I needed it. It wasn't, I couldn't feel it when I needed it. And now have some feelings about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating set of feelings. To me, this is something I experienced years and years and years ago, even before I came to the Red Road. It's like what I learned. I used to do breath work and teach breath work and lead breath work workshops, et cetera, et cetera. And what I learned from my breath work was that like so much of my feeling state had emanated from the circumstances of my birth. And then I started to realize, and then I got very specialized. Like I was a forceps baby. There's all kinds of rules that they had about like, well, forceps generally, blah, blah. And I found that fascinating because I like that kind of stuff. But the thing that I came to realize was the fact that we are born just blows our minds. It's like everything you need is provided for in the womb, including conscious connection to a power that is so far greater than yourself. You don't need to talk. You don't need to figure anything out. You just float. Temperature's perfect. You're always comfortable. Generally speaking, babies are always comfortable. So it's like when you're born, your mother is rejecting you. That's your experience. Your mom can't wait to see you, right? Yay, Tom's here, right? And it's just like, but you're like, whoa, wait a minute. So it's like some babies come out and they're laughing, like Josie came out. She's like, whoa, I like it. Okay. But then after the fact, it's like, it's very uncomfortable being a person.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean I can't have that? What do you mean I can't eat that? What do you mean I can't do that? Immediately, we start getting into an opposition with this person who's already rejected us, right? And so people say, well, where all these weird adolescent feelings come from? They come from that, really. And so that's what, teenagers are acting out. You don't really love me. You don't really care about me. It's like, yeah, if you really cared about me, I'd still be in that amazing hotel with room service. So, it's like we're animals, dude. Why would it be any more complicated than that? Just because we can think up existential stuff doesn't mean we're existential beings. We're just not that, we're not that complicated. So I tried to be complicated. There's this movie called Harvey. Have you ever heard of it?
No, I don't think I've heard of it.
Okay, so I'll just tell you a little thing about it. So there's this guy, Elwood P. Dowd, and he has this gigantic 6 foot tall imaginary friend named Harvey, who's a rabbit. And he walks around town with Harvey, and they go to the bar together, and they go to the, their family dinners together, et cetera, et cetera. And he's always, like Harvey's the guy's got his arm around Harvey, or, he's saying, holding a door open for Harvey. And his family is, he's nuts, he's nuts. So they hire a psychiatrist to come and like on the sly, get him committed to an insane asylum because they're so worried about him because he just wanders around in free space with this invisible rabbit, right? So finally, the psychiatrist comes to town, and he doesn't tell Elwood that he's a psychiatrist. He's just a nice fellow. And so they're at the local bar together. And so the psychiatrist is asking Elwood all these questions. He says, "You're so kind and so courteous. It's like, were you born that way?" He says, "Oh no. He says, when I was a child, my mother said to me, Elwood, in this world, you must be oh so clever or oh so kind. And I've already tried being oh so clever." So that's all I'm talking about, right? We're all walking around with an imaginary 6 foot tall white rabbit. This is what's really going on, right? Right.
Right.
And if we're kind, people pick up on it. I'm not talking about nice. Nice is a different thing. Kind is when, if it's possible to be kind and courteous to another human being, rather than give them a bunch of crap, is very helpful.
So the distinction between kind and nice, then, how do you distinguish between those two things? I have some ideas.
Nice is a reflex, it's reflexive. It's like kind is a choice, because kind means somebody says something to you and you don't like it, or you think they shouldn't even think that. And kind is when you take a breath, even if it's internal, and you just go, well, thanks for telling me that.
That's kindness, like when you're just kind of take it in and you don't maybe not.
I'm going to take responsibility for how that makes me feel, because this isn't an assault. This other person's just telling me something. Same thing if somebody says, I'm in a relationship with somebody and in the past, and she says, I don't love you anymore. It's like, okay, I could have had a lot of conversations about that, right? It's like, why don't you love me anymore? We've been together all this. It's like, and then and now it's sort of like, okay, it's just like, okay,
Seems
wow,
like
that's
being
very painful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just,
Right.
I'm going to use my energy to accept that rather than wear you out to try to get you to tell me that you'll stay with me, even when I know you don't love me, because you just told me, right? You just told me. So it's like, I have to learn to accept that. And if it changes, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But it's like being at acceptance in every moment for what it is and believing that other people fundamentally are telling the truth in the absence of the need to deceive you. You can live a pretty good life with just that. That'll do it.
In the absence of the need to deceive you, just so again, the people are fundamentally telling the truth in the absence of the need to deceive you.
Yeah. Most people are telling you the truth. You might not like the truth. Frequently, I don't. It's just like somebody says, tell me about your mom. I don't really do that kind of work anymore. But somebody's like, well, let me tell you about my mother. And they'll tell me about all this stuff. It's very, very painful. Okay. I've been doing ceremonies for 35 years. Everybody who ever said, I only pray my mother could come here, their mother always comes. Their mother always turns out to be the nicest lady that ever lived. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like, who the hell are they talking about? And there is no mother that ever comes in here that's 6'7" with flames coming out of their fingernails. They're all just these little old ladies, right? So it's like, sometimes you can't know that until you sat with medicine with your mom and understand, felt her innocence. It's like, God, she's just a person. She doesn't know what the hell she's doing. So the only entity that should know what they're doing from birth on is God, not mom. And not you for sure. You just got here. What do you know? It's like, I'm going to be 75 years old in October. I just got here too, believe it or not. It's like, I'm learning so much stuff at age 74.956 that I can't even believe it. And I thought at say age 60, by the time I'm 72, I'm going to know everything. Yeah.
I figured it was 40 that you got to that level, and that was when you started.
Yeah, when you're 30, it's 40. When you're 40, it's 50. You know what I'm saying? Now it's 85 for me. So
it just keeps going up. Like the moving the goalpost seems unfair.
Exactly. The goalpost.
So it seems like then we get the pain comes from the expectation that we have of people, that they should know what they're doing and they should have known in some way. Like you talk about the mother thing, and like the mother wound obviously is a big deal, or can be a big deal, or maybe not the father wound as well. But it's like these people should have known better. Like my needs didn't get met at this time, and so now I have all of these painful feelings because I have this expectation of this person that they should have been exactly like I needed and wanted them to be at the time that I needed it, and now I'm like stuck in a pain cycle.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's the same thing you apply to yourself. You're talking before, like, what would it take to get a person to pray? It would be humility. How is humility obtained? Okay, first you try everything that's not working to make sure that it doesn't work, and then you go, oh my God. And then a Sufi teaching that I read years ago said, we don't do it till we come to despair. And really, the spiritual conversion, which means that we turn our life and our will over to that power greater than ourselves, it comes after 2 or 3. It's like we get that sense and we go, oh my God, I never want to let this go. Then we go right back into our routines because the same sets of feelings, ideas, et cetera, get triggered. And we don't know what to do about it. Then we despair that we're ever going to be relieved, and we go back to the medicine or a prayer or whatever, and we're relieved once again. And once again, we go through a thing, we're so grateful and happy, and we feel the feeling we want to feel, and then we forget and we go on, and boom, we're right back where we were. So the third time is when we get that, we're stuck, we don't know what to do. We ask for God and there's no answer. You don't hear anything. And then we go, oh my God, I blew all those opportunities I had when God was listening to me. God has quit listening to me, blah, 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 all those terrible, truly desperate feelings. Okay. Right. And at the worst moment, I've been here the whole time. Don't forget me next time. You see what I'm saying? So it's like,
Okay.
yeah, you don't have to be humiliated in order to get him, to feel humble. It's like we feel humble when we realize that the things that we do that we think are going to produce the states of feeling and thought and physical feelings that we want can be affected by us more than infrequently.
Like the things that we do can affect the way that we like
Absolutely.
we want. Yeah.
Yeah, my life and your life are basically based on, in the absence of bombing and shooting and all the other stuff which could happen, our lives are pretty much based on how we think and feel about everything.
Right.
Because there are no circumstances. White privilege or privilege is just the absence of circumstances. That's all. It's a privilege to not live in Afghanistan, for instance, right now, and feel so threatened, or be a woman and have this terror that your life is going to be circumscribed. It's like, I live in Berkeley. No one's going to circumscribe me. I can pretty much do what I want to do. I'm very, very free. I don't have to answer to anybody. I have to look over my shoulder. I have to obey the laws, which I do. And so, I have to understand I am very, very safe. It's a privilege of safety while we have this safety to make these changes, so that when we reconnect with the rest of the world, all the people who've been able to make these changes will have some kind of common language that we can sense in other people, so that we can connect with them and create the new world as we go, because that's what we're going to have to do. There's no lightning path to that.
Okay. So what do you say then to people who are stuck in those situations? Like they're in this kind of really desperate situation. I kind of got on a bit of a North Korea kick recently. There's somebody doing a podcast tour, Yeonmi Park, and she's talking about the things that are going on in North Korea. And obviously there's like, that's, I think, probably one of the worst places, but then there's other places where things are just not going anywhere near as well as we've got it, even though we've got our discomforts. And I think nobody really gets out of life alive and escapes without some kind of suffering, or maybe drinking some kind of poison. But it's like, what do you say to, I don't know if I've got a question here, but it's like, it seems in some way those, I look at those people's lives sometimes and just think, oh, how do they manage? Like, what do you say to those people if you ever encounter them?
I say, I'm really sorry that that's happening in your country, or that happened in your life. I love you very much. Is there anything that I could do to help you?
Right.
That's it.
Simple stuff.
Yeah. Keep it really, really simple. Tom, I got to go. I got another appointment at 1:30, but it's been so much fun talking to you.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
George. It was a pleasure. It was really nice to speak to you again. Thanks for your time and sharing.